Hey guys, this is a video I just didn't want to make, but let's be absolutely clear from the outset. This attack didn't happen because Australia's gun laws are too weak. It didn't happen because law-abiding firearms owners were insufficiently restricted. And it didn't happen because sporting shooters, farmers or licensed hunters suddenly became a threat to national security. It happened because the systems designed to identify, monitor and disrupt terrorism failed repeatedly, visibly and catastrophically. And now instead of owning that failure, governments are pointing at guns. According to the information that has entered the public domain, the attacker was not an unknown figure that emerged from nowhere. He was reportedly known to the authorities and been on the counter-terrorism watch list as far back as 2019. That alone should have placed him in a category requiring sustained attention, reassessment and risk monitoring. Watch lists are not decorative. They exist because someone has already crossed the threshold of concern. Despite that status, the individual was later photographed at the October 7 gathering where chants of "Gas the Jews" were reportedly heard. That language is not ambiguous. It's not metaphorical. It is political dissent. It is explicit genocidal incitement. This was not said behind closed doors. It was public, visible and documented. He was also reported to have travelled overseas to Pakistan for religious instruction. Travel itself is not a crime. But in counter-terrorism analysis, overseas travel for ideological or religious immersion by an individual already known to authorities is not neutral information. It is a recognised risk indicator, particularly when paired with the later conduct. The individual was allegedly associated with a radical mosque in Western Sydney and a cleric long known for his extremist rhetoric. This is not a question of theology, it's a question of ideology, influence and exposure. Radicalisation does not occur in isolation, it occurs in environments through networks and under mentorship. Despite this trajectory, he was reportedly able to participate in hunting activities with his father, despite not holding a firearms licence or a hunting licence. He was allegedly involved with a Muslim-only hunting club. If reporting is accurate, either failed to verify his legal status or deliberately ignored it. This is not a gun law failure. This is a compliance and enforcement failure and potentially a criminal one. He was later again photographed at the pro-Palestine march across the Harbour Bridge, this time reportedly waving the ISIS flag. At that point, any attempt to frame this as a mere political activism collapses entirely. ISIS is a declared terrorist organisation. Public association with its symbol is neither subtle nor accidental. He also reportedly travelled to a well-known terrorist hotspot in the Philippines, further reinforcing a pattern that any competent intelligence assessment would describe as escalating. Most alarmingly, he was living under the same roof as his father, a man who held a valid New South Wales firearms licence despite not even being an Australian citizen. That fact alone should have triggered scrutiny. When an individual on a terrorism watch list is cohabiting with a licensed firearm holder, the system should not rely on luck. It should activate safeguards, reassessment and risk controls. Instead, it appeared nothing meaningful occurred. The two then allegedly travelled together to Bondi where the attack unfolded. 15 innocent people were killed, multiple others wounded. In the aftermath, police reportedly located homemade IEDs and ISIS flags in their associated vehicles. After all of this, after years of indicators, public extremist behaviour, overseas travel, known associations, licensing anomalies and enforcement blind spots, the political response was not accountability, it was a question. Should we restrict guns further? That question is not merely insulting to law-abiding firearms owners, it's a deliberate misdirection, because the gun did not radicalise the individual. The firearm did not place him on a watch list. The rifle did not wave an ISIS flag. The shotgun did not chant any genocidal slogans. Those acts were carried out by a person whose trajectory should have been unmistakable to the very agencies tasked with preventing this exact outcome. This is where the government response moves from inadequate to appalling. Federal authorities have not clearly stated what was known, when it was known, or why no decisive action followed. Intelligence agencies invoke operational secrecy while demanding public trust. State governments announce the toughest gun reforms in a generation without explaining how those reforms would have stopped this attack, or why the existing system failed to respond to warning signs already present.
The National Gun Buyback Scheme is on top of the work that was agreed by National Cabinet on Monday, limiting the number of firearms to be held by any one individual, limiting open-ended firearms licensing and the types of guns that are legal.
The reality is uncomfortable but unavoidable. It is easier to regulate licensed, compliant citizens than it is to admit intelligence and governance failure, and corrosive to public confidence. So the blame is shifted, quietly, carefully and cynically. This is not a public safety policy. This is institutional self-preservation. And yet, amid the failure, something else emerged, something Australia should never forget. In the middle of this chaos, terror and gunfire, ordinary Australians, first responders, displayed extraordinary courage. Before the police even arrived, civilians attempted to intervene. Unarmed men and women moved towards the sound of gunfire, trying to distract, delay or stop the attackers. Some paid for that decision with their lives. Others were wounded. None hesitated. They weren't trained operators. They were fathers, sons, workers, surfers, mothers, people who saw evil unfolding and stepped forward anyway. When police made contact, they did so with a standard issue Glock 17 pistol, chambered in 9mm. It's not a rifle, not a specialist weapon, not military hardware. It's sidearms, against gunmen who'd already demonstrated lethal intent. Several police officers were shot in the initial engagement. 2 were critically wounded. They held their ground under fire. One detective, positioned at distance, delivered an exceptional display of marksmanship, neutralising both attackers from approximately 40 metres. For anyone who understands pistols, shooting under stress, real stress, incoming fire, civilians everywhere, this was not luck, it was discipline, training, composure under conditions most people would never comprehend. That single act stopped further loss of life. Paramedics then entered the hot zone. Not after it was cleared, not after the silence. They moved in while the threat was still active, treating catastrophic injuries, applying tourniquets, managing airway trauma, and evacuating the wounded, knowing they could become targets themselves. Civilians again stepped up. Surfers used surfboards as improvised stretchers, pulling the wounded from danger, shielding them, moving them away from the killing ground toward the waiting ambulances. This was not coordinated. This was not rehearsed. This was instinct and courage. Bondi lifeguards ran towards the sound of shots wearing nothing but board shorts, a shirt and carrying trauma kits. No body armour, no weapons, just training, muscle memory and a refusal to stand back while people bled out in front of them. This was Australia at its best, revealed in its worst moment. And it stands in a stark contrast to what followed. As families waited for confirmation that their loved ones were alive or dead, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, stood before the media and chose his words carefully. Too carefully. He refused to identify the attack for what it was.
This afternoon, there has been a devastating terrorist incident at Bondi at the Hanukkah by the Sea celebration.
He avoided the words Islamic extremism. He avoided the word Islam entirely. Instead, he pivoted. He spoke about right-wing extremism. He spoke about gun control. He spoke about anything except the ideology, the warning signs, and the system failures that just cost innocent Australians their lives. This was not a caution. This was not statesmanship. This was political self-preservation. The same evasion echoed through the comments of Tony Burke. Again, no ideological clarity. Again, no direct condemnation and no acknowledgement of intelligence failures. And Australians deserve to understand this plainly. This was not about social cohesion. This was about votes. It was safer to dilute the truth than to confront it. Safer to redirect blame towards compliant citizens than to expose institutional failure. Let's contrast that with leadership from elsewhere. Imagine if US President Donald Trump learned that attackers had travelled to the Philippines, trained in or near known terrorist camp areas. There'd be no rhetorical gymnastics, no avoidance of ideology. Those camps would be identified and destroyed. The message would be clear. Training terrorists has consequences. Australia chose silence, deflection, and policy theatre. This is what weak leadership looks like. Not the absence of sympathy, but the absence of courage. Not incompetence alone, but deliberate evasion. Not failure, but refusal to own it. And if Australians still believe these people care about their safety, about the truth, or about accountability, then Bondi should have shattered that illusion permanently. Because when the moment demanded honesty and leadership, the government chose optics, narrative management, and political survival. And 15 Australians paid the price.
Hey, true blue, don't say you've gone. Say you've knocked off for a smoker, and you'll be back later on. Hey, true blue, hey, true blue, give it to me straight, face to face. Are you really disappearing? Just another dying race. Hey, true blue,